Hi, everyone. I'm Peggy Kay, and today I have news and updates for the week ending May 18th, 2025. This week, there are updates from YouTube, TikTok, Threads, X, and some more. I apologize for the way my voice sounds. I've got some sore throat thing going on. I sound like a frog. What can you do, though? So, I hope you're having a great weekend. Let's get started with YouTube updates. The first update is one that I think is kind of neat. It's an option to upvote and downvote videos in a playlist. And that can actually change the order of the videos. And the example that YouTube gives is that making a music playlist for a party, and all the people there can vote up or down which songs they like. You can do this either on desktop or on mobile. And once you have it set up, you've created your playlist, you can click the pencil icon, that's the edit icon, and get to the various settings for the playlist. Then you can choose to whether to have voting turned on or off. And if voting is on, you can either have everyone vote or limit it to collaborators on the playlist. So just a note that if you have collaborative playlists already, voting is already turned on. This is by default. And then in the playlist settings, you can choose what order the playlist is set in so that it is sorted by the top number of votes. That way, when people vote on the videos in the playlist, those with more votes will rise to the top. You might not want to do this on all your playlists, of course, especially if the order is important to you. So we get now the other big update from YouTube this week. YouTube launched charts for the top US podcasts. Now, on YouTube, of course, podcasts are often videos. This is charts for YouTube proper, not YouTube Music. And this is the current chart. It is based on watch time. And, as you probably know, you can actually make any playlist on your channel a podcast. You just tick a box in the playlist settings. YouTube notes that for purposes of the charts, it does not include podcast playlists that are mostly shorts or clips. These are full episodes. Andrew asks, can you set it so only subscribers can vote? No, but you can set it to only collaborators voting, and that's even more restricted than your subscribers. Or you could share a link to become a collaborator with just your subscribers, and then they have access to voting. I can imagine people who like to mess things up if it's set to everyone just downvoting things or upvoting things to be a griefer. If it's possible to do, somebody will do it. And the other update from YouTube this week is that they updated the mini player. This is a screen capture from the Creator Insider video from this week. You should check that out for all the details. If you're in the mobile app and you're watching a video and then you start surfing around, this mini player appears so that the video can keep playing while you're surfing around. Now, if you hide the mini player, it pauses and remembers where you were in the video. If you have a YouTube Premium subscription where you have background playing of videos, that the audio will keep playing. So that's a nice little update. So this week was YouTube Brandcast. This is a presentation to the media and marketing professionals, basically a big production saying why they should be purchasing ads on YouTube. So this was a big deal. They brought up a bunch of YouTube celebrities and shared a lot of stats. And this is the context of this is the TV upfronts in New York City. This is where all the TV networks go and basically say, this is why you should buy advertising on our network. So really, YouTube is focused on TV in this. And the interesting big stat that they shared is that since February this year, YouTube is the #1 most watched distributor of content across broadcast, cable, and streaming in the United States. And you can imagine that's big, but it's even bigger because they're saying most people are watching on TVs. So this is what they're telling advertisers, of course. So part of this is also announcing new ad formats and new advertising opportunities. I just wanted to mention that this one that caught my eye, it's called Peak Points. So they have Gemini AI determine the peak moments in a video. You can kind of see in this screenshot, I don't know if it's too small, but the peak moment that they've picked out there is, someone is proposing, here's the ring. That's obviously a peak moment in a video. And then they say, well, we'll sell you ad space around that. So there's like a peak moment, and then immediately after that, a window where they sell ads because that's when people are engaged with the video. This sounds good for advertisers, maybe not so great for video viewers. But this is the kind of thing that YouTube and other platforms as well are doing. They're selling advertising, so they want to make sure that when they sell ads, people are seeing the ads. Kind of makes sense, right? So switching over to TikTok, they have a new tool called AI Alive, which sounds science fiction-y, but this is a tool in TikTok stories. And what you do is you have a still photo, you enter a prompt. So this is generative AI, and then it animates your photo, brings it alive, and it makes a short video clip. Seems kind of fun. It'll be interesting to see if they actually bring this to the main TikTok video editor, but this is in their story camera right now. And this is, of course, they picked a really adorable cat and dog scene. Yeah, I would watch that. Last week, one of the big updates I talked about last week is that Spotify said they're going to start showing a new metric, plays, on both audio and video of podcasts. And the idea is that a play is sort of like a view, except you can't call it a view if it's just audio. They have a total number that's collected from both audio and video, and that's what shows on each episode. So that was last week. This week, they had to make an announcement because they got a lot of negative feedback about these plays being public. A lot of creators didn't want that. I'm not sure about all the reasons why. I can imagine, if you don't have millions of plays on your episodes, it may not look great. And so this week they posted that they were listening, and then they actually did make changes. So now, instead of each episode showing the total number of plays, it will not show anything until there are at least 50,000 plays. And then after that, it will only show milestones. So there's like, oh, this has reached 50,000 plays, and then there's a badge at 100,000 plays, and then there's a badge at 1 million plays, and so forth. Creators can still see the actual number of total plays on their content on their analytics dashboard. So I thought this was actually pretty interesting because Spotify launched this. They immediately got negative feedback, and they dealt with it and they made changes. So of course it would be better if they'd kind of gotten feedback before they launched it, but I thought this was a good example of listening to creators and what's important to them, because despite all the things that they say, as a potential viewer or listener, I don't care about the numbers. I don't know. And of course, in Spotify's examples, it's always like, oh, 375,000 plays, and likely the vast majority of episodes don't have nearly that many. It's like those podcast charts that YouTube has now. It's the same kinds of content, the same creators, the same shows at the top all the time. Politics, true crime, some comedy. Most creators will never break the top. Let's see. And a note from Bonnie Bunny Gaming, Chimchar. Do you go by Chimchar? The next TikTok ban date, sale deadline under the Trump administration is June 18th. Well, that should be interesting. It's not clear to me that negotiations are even happening. I wouldn't be surprised if it just keeps getting kicked down the road. And of course, that puts a lie to the claim that this is some sort of national security threat. But who knows? Maybe they've come to a deal in some way. So thank you for sharing that. Over on X, they've talked a lot about becoming a video first platform. Haven't seen a lot of evidence of that, but they did launch 4K video. So that's kind of a big deal if you're watching the video on a great big screen, like a great big television. As an aside, I thought it was kind of interesting that the X Creators account posted this. This is the first thing they've posted since like February. I don't know if they just don't have someone regularly running the account, or if the creator things are sort of an afterthought right now, or what's happening there. So right now, only X Premium subscribers can upload 4K video. They can only upload on iOS and the web, not Android yet. Anybody can watch the 4K video. It's kind of an interesting thing. As a viewer, I don't really care about 4K video because I'm usually watching on a smaller screen or a lower resolution screen. 4K is option. That option is great if you're on a great big television, say. If you're watching on your phone, it's not going to make any difference. So I thought that was interesting. And will X get more video focused? I'm not sure. It's not clear what they're doing, but 4K video is now available. I think it is kind of sucky on X that you have to pay to get access to the top features. So you have to be a paying subscriber. One of the nice things about YouTube is that it is entirely free, especially for creators getting started. That's really awesome. All right, so over on Threads, Threads is Meta's answer to Twitter. You can now add up to 5 links in your profile. Previously, it was only 1 link, like Instagram. So Instagram, they only let you put 1 link in your profile, see, and it's usually something like Linktree, something like that. So you click the link and you get a bunch more links. But now you can add 5 links. And I think the question comes up, is Threads becoming more friendly to links? They updated their insights to show how often the links you share actually get clicked. That's a nice metric to have. It's interesting because currently most people assume that if you have a link in your post, it is not going to be recommended as much. So it like hurts your post to have a link in it. So you see a lot of people doing this thing on other platforms too, where they make their main post maybe with a photo, and then after that they reply with the link. It's really annoying. And is this maybe a way for Threads to say, hey, look, if you post these links, you're actually getting views? Maybe it's kind of to counter that, especially since Blue Sky has been very, very clear that they don't make any distinction between posts with and without links. There's no reason to not post a link on Blue Sky. Threads is kind of a weird place, honestly, because it has a lot of users, mostly because it let people create accounts starting in Instagram and bring your whole social network and followers over from Instagram. But it's just, I don't know, I feel like it doesn't have the sort of cultural vibe that Blue Sky does. And of course, people are still posting on X. I don't know. Will it get more popular? Maybe. Certainly Meta has the money to throw at it. And hopefully it gets full ActivityPub integration. And I wanted to bring up another story about Pinterest. There was a problem. A lot of Pinterest accounts were suspended. Pinterest was apparently quite dismissive of that. Kind of, you see this in platforms all the time. It's like those people complain that their account was suspended. They say, oh, you should appeal. That's it. And in this case, it seemed like a lot more than usual. Users were complaining for weeks. Eventually, they investigated. And it turns out that Pinterest messed up. They said there was an internal error that led to over-enforcement, and some accounts were mistakenly deactivated. They apologized and said that they are restoring those accounts. They said it was not because they were relying on AI for moderation. I'm assuming, though, that it was automated. There's lots of things that are automated that aren't actually AI. And this just brings up the point that when you're posting on social media, your account is not really yours, right? It's the platform's. It can be shut down. So if there's anything important to you, make a backup. Have a separate backup so things aren't all entirely stored on social media. I also wanted to give a quick shout out to Fedica. Fedica is a social media posting platform. You connect your social accounts, and you can schedule posts, and you can customize the posts for each platform. With a free account, you can actually link to 9 different social media platforms, including Blue Sky, Threads, X, Pinterest, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook. There's a couple others I think I missed in there. And then if you have a paid account, you have more options. You can also link to TikTok and YouTube. But Fedica just added Tumblr posting, which is kind of cool. I'm not sure what's happening with Tumblr exactly. It's owned by Automatic now. That's Matt Mullenweg's company. The WordPress guy, they said they were going to move the back end of Tumblr onto WordPress, but they've had a lot of employees leave, and there's been this drama and lawsuits. So I don't know what's happening with Tumblr, but this seems good. An easy way to post. So Craig says, your data won't be on the internet forever. That's true. It's kind of an interesting thing because they say, oh, be careful what you post. It could be there forever, and that's true. Sometimes you post things and years later people can find it. But on the other hand, there's a lot that has just disappeared. As platforms change, they shut down, they close accounts. Anything precious to you, make a backup. That is the moral of this story. Also, just really quickly, last week I talked about this being Discord's 10th birthday. They've posted there are sweepstakes they are running from their social media accounts on Instagram and X. Check those out. I think that's just through the weekend. And they're asking people to submit their memories about Discord. If you do that, there's this hint that there may be swag or a prize or something like that. So check it out if you have memories of Discord that you want to share. And then this coming week is Google I/O. There's going to be a ton of announcements. Android, AI, Google's other platforms. It's a huge deal. You can register for free. The keynote is live. I think some of the other presentations are just recorded. And I'm thinking about maybe doing a live stream during the keynote if I can get it together, talk about it, see if I can do it. If you're interested, check out my channel Monday night, Tuesday morning to see what's happening. So what was happening 10 years ago this week? 10 years ago this week, Google connected the Twitter Firehose to search. This deal gave Google access to a feed of Twitter's new tweets. I almost said posts. And these would appear in the Google search results, first on mobile, and then a few months later on desktop. That means that if there was a big news event, breaking news, you could do a search and it would turn up these recent posts. So there was this sort of on-again, off-again relationship. Google had access to the Twitter Firehose between 2009 and 2011. Then that deal ended, and now a few years later, they set it up again. It was interesting because in 2015, Twitter decided that they would not allow third-party resellers to sell access to the Firehose data. They would just sell it themselves. And this was a deal, I think, that came out of that. Of course, the third-party resellers, this kind of screwed them over. They were kind of taken by surprise by that. But I don't know. Twitter didn't always do things the nicest way. So the benefit to Twitter was that people would see these brand new tweets, like, oh, there's discussion going on. They would click the tweet, it would land them on Twitter, they could see the tweet, and then there would be a prompt for them to create an account. So this was sort of a growth strategy for Twitter. And I thought it was interesting. Some people called this the end of the Google Plus era. I think it is maybe not a coincidence that the original deal between Twitter and Google broke down around the same time that Google Plus launched. Now, Google Plus was no longer primary in search when they're putting back these fresh tweets. And I'm going to call that foreshadowing. So let's fast forward to 2022. Elon Musk took over Twitter. As far as I can tell, Google still has that Firehose deal in place. In 2023, Twitter started only displaying tweets to signed-in users. And what this did was break the links in Google search. Apparently, Google dropped something like half of the links to tweets in its index when this happened. They still had the Firehose for the most recent tweets, but the older tweets disappeared, and then a few days later, Twitter fixed that. So Google had access again to the older tweets so they could get them indexed again. So what's happening today? If you search for recent events, you see a shelf for what people are saying. And this has posts not just from Twitter, but from other social platforms as well, including Instagram and Facebook and Reddit. This is a search I did last night about that ship that hit the Brooklyn Bridge, and you do a search and you can immediately get the social posts. And I think it's really great that Google is showing posts from multiple social media platforms. They obviously have different points of view. So that is all for this week. Thank you so much for joining me. Next week's episode will be all about Google I/O announcements, both this year and 10 years ago. I think it should be interesting. Thank you for joining me, and I will see you next Sunday.